That's about the water. When you look at sanitation, it's even worse. You see this huge track which is red, and lots of other countries which are still yellow, where they still do not have access to. This is drinking water. Still drinking water. 59 countries are off track. But when you come to sanitation, you look at it. It's even worse. You see here, right here, there are parts of this right here where the sanitation is not safe. Almost 1/6 of the world population. See, the current population, world population is 6 billion plus. 1.1 billion people still practice open defecation, and that is a serious issue. And many of them are in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and partly in Latin America. Now, I'm not going to take you through the MDG 8. That's about partnership. That's about finding more and more investments and try and see how best we can improve the way we handle decisions. The interesting thing will be to find out how many countries are spending money on the latest supersonic jets to bomb their own populations or a neighbor's population versus spending monies for schools in their own countries, or versus building latrines or piped water systems for their towns. If you just look at these statistics, most of these statistics are available today in the public domain. And it will be interesting research, just sitting there and looking at data and challenging leadership to say, why are we spending money on fighting each other, and why can't we fight these diseases and problems that can help us move forward? That is the kind of questions that children need to be asking. And that is when leadership will start becoming more aware of their promises. Because they make promises and forget them. They get elected because they're making promises for children. They're not making promises for adults. Right? Most of these promises are, interestingly, for those who don't have a voice. They are for future. They only, the politicians tend to remember the promises that they make to adults. Because the adults will come back to voting booth 4 years, 5 years, or 6 years later. But most of these promises are for children who first do not know that these promises are there. And second, we don't challenge them. And it is people like you who need to start challenging them through the power of networking, the power of modern tools, whether it is the Twitter or Facebook, and through those, start asking the right questions, start analyzing data, start finding out where are the worst off. Where are our brothers and sisters in the world who are still not having the power to ask the right questions to get some of these systems in place. The final note on child protection is about the norms and standards, and we need to produce a kind of a protective environment, something like what our friend was talking earlier about, a caring and nurturing environment, whether we have standards on corporal punishment in school, whether there are standards around, the way children are treated at home or in school, the violence against children, the pornography and child abuse and things like that. That is another major area. One of the most obvious and visible signs of such abuse is child labor. That is one concrete example. There are many countries still having child labor. To do work over and above what we normally do as a child, play, study, have some forms of entertainment is fine. But imagine these countries where children are doing work in place of adults and earning money much less than what the adult would earn, because many of these children are put into economic activity by those who want to abuse them, because it's all right to pay a child, say $10, whereas an adult would, for the same amount of work, have to be paid $20. So they pay less, but so profit more, and unless we create a norm and standard and a common understanding that children below 14 years cannot be doing any work for those factories and those companies and so on, or children below 18 cannot be doing hazardous forms of labor, things like working in a glass factory or working with the net and stuff like that. So that if you start looking at the child labor, what do these countries, what do children work on? These are things which even in adults, when it comes to working in this country, there are adequate safety and standards. But for children, nobody cares, nobody is looking at it, so we are all winking, and while the winking is going on, children are abused into doing work which even adults require a lot of protection and standards. So that's what the whole movement around child protection and protective environment is about. Simple things like birth registration. Many countries don't even like to record that there are children born. Look at the number of countries where less than 50% of children are registered. If they are not registered, then nobody cares about them. They cannot get to a school, they cannot get to a primary health center. It's like you have this social security number as a requirement for everything, right? In this country. Imagine, in many countries, they don't even have that status. They just, for the state, for the government, they don't exist. So that is an important way how you can measure how the country is looking at children seriously, whether they are registered, they are a part of a system to say that they carry certain entitlements when they grow up. And what do you find? Again, the same story. This is one way looking at children from rich families versus poor families. You can look at it by different ethnic populations, by different classes. You'll find the same pattern. Those who don't have power, those who don't have a voice are not given the treatment in the right way. And that is repeatedly the story throughout. Here you look at, again, I talked about teenage pregnancy. If children, imagine, 35% of women who are now 20 to 24 years, that is 1/3 of women in the developing world are married, and once they are married, very often they end up having a child soon after, within a year, and that means their body is not ready, they don't even know what being married means, and they are when they are still children, they are thrust upon responsibilities of the kind they cannot take care of. This is something which is, I do not know whether you're aware of, this is called female genital cutting. It used to be called mutilation, but it is now called cutting. It's something which is a practice in a few countries, particularly in Africa, and there are now, when children realize that this is not a good practice, they are in the families, women are standing up against it in Egypt, in Sudan, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Senegal. Number of them, the villages declare themselves as villages which will not have any woman who has had genital cutting. And earlier it was felt years ago that if the cutting has not taken place, then they are not ready for marriage, they cannot be married. But now, villages are through a normative peer pressure, if I may call. They put pressure and say, this village, everyone will remain without cutting. These are women. In Western Central Africa, 66% of women think that it is all right for a man to beat a woman under certain circumstances. So if they believe that, how will that stop? So it's got to be a combination of both. And I'm sure if the survey, if it is done in this country, again you will find some families, some white immigrants, that it's okay for a woman to be beaten by a man. But that's where we need to start attacking if we are really looking for a gender parity. Okay? This is about corporal punishment and psychological oppression. Number of children who experience physical punishment either at home or at school. There are other ways of being, I saw that paradigm, authoritarian versus authoritative versus permissive parents. So you need not be authoritarian, but still be authoritative. Have a sense of discipline without through a mix of strategies without really having to take the stick. And those are the kind of norms that we are looking at when it comes to child protection. This is about disability.